Cool. Okay, so welcome everybody. This month we've got Leigh Rathbone talking. He's going to be talking about the future of tech and kind of where the mobile phone sits in that future. But before I hand it over to himself, just want to basically say, well, firstly, and if I can take hold of this screen so it's not jumping. Take that off, Leap. There we go. So yeah, we're all over social media, various different ones, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We've also recently opened up a Discord channel. Don't worry, I don't expect you to remember that link, but what you can do is go to the website, ne.technology. And in the top there, in that website, there's a link to that. Any questions or feedback, we would really appreciate it, whether that be for the guys here at Any Tech or Leigh himself around this talk. Whether it's good or bad feedback, always looking to hear that. In terms of speakers, if anybody ever wanted to speak at Any Tech, or they know somebody that they would like to see speak, please do get in touch. We can do our best to get in touch with whoever that may be and see if they wanted to do a talk at one of the months. In terms of who are we, so I'm Chris, nice to meet you all. We also have James on the call. James, give us a wave. And then we've also got Mark as well. Unfortunately, Mark couldn't be here today as he had a personal commitment that he had to attend to, but he is very apologetic for not being able to make this meetup. Big thanks to our sponsors, Scott Logic. Without them, we probably wouldn't have a meetup. Usually, we would have free beer and pizza, but unfortunately, because of the kind of current situation, which I'm sure you're all aware, and I'm not going to bore you with the details of, we can't host face-to-face meetups, but we would love to get back to doing those whenever we can. But yeah, at the moment we're just following government guidelines, and we'll take it as it comes. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Leigh. Any questions during the talk, please do just put them in the chat, and we can have a look at them at the end.
Okay, just trying to work out why. Let me just move you guys off screen. So you're not right. That's it. Can you see my screens? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Looks good. Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Right. We are good to go. Okay. Right. Okay. So, hello. I am Leigh. I'm not going to do much of an introduction because you'll get to know me as the talk goes on, and I think probably 2/3 of the call you've met me before. But for those that don't know me, you can contact me through my Twitter handle or my email address. That's the company I work for, TLA. I'm into day 6. So I'm still pretty new here. But I'm going to get straight into it. So what's the talk about? The talk is multi-layered. The talk is about the role of the mobile phone, how it's been a primary device for all of us, but actually it's had its day. And I hope by the end of this talk, you'll agree with me. And I'm going to ask for a show of hands in a minute as to who thinks the mobile phone is dead. But before I do, I want to tell you a story. And I hope it resonates with every single one of you. I would guess in the last 2, 3, 4 years, every single one of you have upgraded your mobile phone. And you will have gone through a bit of a journey. And I'll try and relay that journey because I did it recently. So you get your upgrade, you place your order, and you track your order. And you can see your courier is 2 hours away of delivering that brand new shiny phone. And the excitement levels build up. You get that sick, exciting feeling in your stomach, the butterflies, and it's like, oh, it's here, it's nearly here. There's a knock on the door, and you open it, and there's a little box. And you take that box, and you say thank you to the courier, and you go into the kitchen, and you open it carefully, and you lift the lid off, and the excitement is bubbling up. And then you turn the mobile phone on, and it ends. It ends because there's no more innovation in mobile phones. In fact, if we were in a room and COVID wasn't happening, I'd ask all of you to put your phones on a table face up, and I would struggle to tell the different brands. Back in the day, you could tell a different brand of a mobile phone just by the front of it, because every single brand had a different look and feel. Now, they're all the same. They're all roughly the same size, they're all roughly the same screens. And when they're all turned off and just a black screen, you can't tell the difference. Apart from a little bit of security and maybe a better megapixel camera, there's zero innovation in mobile phones. They've had their day. Now, is there a way anybody can show their hands as to who believes, who's on board with me at this point? So if you can show your hands. If you think the mobile phone is dead, show your hands. I want to see those hands, those little hands go up. Okay, not many hands going up. So my job here is to persuade you that not only is the mobile phone dead, but that your current skill sets are aligned to the mobile phone and desktop, and those skill sets are also dead. And I'm going to show you through the power of storytelling, I'm going to show you what the future looks like and some tips and hints as to what you can do regarding self-development. So, shall we crack on? There's a little bit of a caveat here. I'm going to be talking about, well, I'm a tester, but I'm not a testing expert. I'm going to be talking about IoT. Guess what? I'm not an expert in IoT. I'm going to be talking a little bit about big data, and guess what? I'm not a big data expert. And these views are my own extreme views. They don't represent any company at all. Okay, so I want to see a quick show of hands. Who has worked on first hands, and I mean with your bare hands, not managing teams, but with your own bare hands, who has worked on the following? 3D printer, cryptocurrency, a bot, not many hands, AI algorithm, handwork. Okay, Simon Long's hand went up there. Anything IoT related? If this, then that. If you played around with if this, then that, put your hand up. Okay. And who has built their own Alexa skill? Okay. A few hands have gone up. Now, if I'm the CTO of this company and you are my dev team, I'm going to give you some rich feedback right now. You're not my dev team for the future, because my dev team for the future needs a certain set of skill sets. And if your hands didn't go up for these, I'm going to be wondering whether I keep you around or not. And I know that sounds really blunt, but I'm being blunt to be kind. So I wanted to land a real right hook really early on here, because at the end of the day, what's important are the skills for the future. What's in your toolbox? If you were to open up your toolbox and look inside, what is it? What are the skills you've got now? And what are the skills you're going to need for the future? And that's what this talk's all about. And hopefully by the end, you'll have some ideas as to go away and look at how you build that toolbox to see what skills, traits, and behaviors you need in that toolbox. Okay, so let's get going. In this talk, I'm going to predict the future of tech, and I'm going to give you some hints as to how you can prepare for that future. But when someone predicts the future, they've got to have some credibility. I'm not Elon Musk. I can't just rock in up into a conference and give you some predictions for the future. I've got to try and build some credibility. So the first part of this talk is exactly that. I'm going to take you on my own journey where I think I've worked on some cutting edge technology, which I didn't realize at the time. I think when you work on cutting edge technology, you very, very rarely realize at the time. It's only when you look back into the past and you realize that it was cutting edge and it made a difference. So I'm going to start with my journey, which Lawrence will recognize. This brand here, I worked 2002 to 2009 at Sony Ericsson. I do call it the 7 Wonder Years. I call it the 7 Wonder Years for a reason. I thought the atmosphere in the company was brilliant. I thought the culture was brilliant. But actually the technology I worked on was cutting edge. I just didn't realize at the time. So when I walked through the door at Sony Ericsson, this is what I worked on first of all. The Sony Ericsson P800. The first ever colour touchscreen smartphone. And if anybody on the call here thinks that was Apple, I'm sorry, you're really wrong. Apple didn't come along with their iPhone until I think probably 6 years after this. So this was a tech disruptor. This is what changed the world. This is what led to that phone you have in your pocket or on your desk right now. This is what led to it. And lo and behold, it's making a guest appearance. There it is. And it's working. And I was saying to Lawrence before the call, Lawrence is on the call, by the way. Me and Lawrence worked at Sony Ericsson. I think Lawrence joined around about 2007. Would I be right there, Lawrence? Okay. So this was way before Lawrence joined. What Sony Ericsson did was they really believed in testing in live. And for me in 2002 to hear that, I mean, even now, companies are scared to test in live, even though we know you've got to. But Sony Ericsson encouraged us to go and test in the wild, test in live. They gave us these handsets and asked us to take them home, use them as our own devices on live networks, come back with the defects the next day, the feedback. And it was fabulous. I used to pull this phone out in a pub and my mates would go, wow, what is that? And you couldn't use your finger. There was a little dibber on the side. You had to use the dibber to touch the screen. Remarkable technology. Anyway, the next thing I worked on in 2005, again, prior to yourself joining, Lawrence, at Sony Ericsson, was the world's first smartwatch. Now, those of you that have got a smartwatch on your wrist right now, this is what gave, and there was only 10 of these ever made. And I was lucky enough to not only work on one, but actually keep it and not hand it back. I forgot to do that as I left. So, you know, pulling that out or having that on my wrist in a pub got an absolutely unbelievable reaction. For a smartwatch in that day, 2005, it was just really basic. All your text messages would be read across the bottom screen. You could control your music via that watch. And any phone calls coming through, it used to tell you who was calling. So basic functionality compared to smartwatches these days. But nevertheless, at the time, I never realized it was cutting edge. But now in hindsight, I realized, wow, this was awesome. And it felt like I was working with magic. And this is a great quote from Arthur C. Clarke, and it's not the first time or only time he makes an appearance in my talk here. Arthur C. Clarke, in case you don't know, he wrote Space Odyssey 2001. He also had a TV program in the 80s, which you guys will all be too young to remember. And it was looking at like things like, it was the abominable snowman a real thing? And, you know, sort of those kind of scientific or sci-fi stuff. But what a clever bloke. And I'll come back to how clever this guy was. But this is how I felt. I felt like I was dealing with black magic every time I pulled that phone out or that watch. And I felt like a rock star. I felt like these famous rock stars, every time my mates, their breath would gasp. And, you know, all these world famous rock stars. Sorry, Chris, Simon, you're laughing there. What's wrong? Are you laughing at these two? How dare you? How very, very dare you? These are, these two gave birth to the rock scene. But you know, and just to bring it to life, how much of a rock star I felt working at Sony Ericsson. And I'd love to hear from Lawrence afterwards as to whether he felt he was dealing with a bit of magical software at the time. This specific phone I have here that I forgot to hand back when I left. In 2002, 2003, when I joined, I was working on something called MMS. We all know that's picture messaging. And I'll never forget this lovely person who to this day still gets a Christmas card off me, sent me a video of Kylie Minogue's TV advert. So when Kylie Minogue launched her underwear range called Agent Provocateur, she did a specific video to go with it. And it got banned everywhere. You couldn't watch it on TV, you couldn't get it, you couldn't watch it in the cinema, you couldn't watch it on there was no such thing as YouTube there. You couldn't watch it on MTV. It was banned because it was so provocative. So you can imagine my joy as I open up my email and there's a file embedded in the email and it's this Kylie Minogue video. Now, my first reaction wasn't to watch the video. Of course I wouldn't. The first thing that struck me was that video was 498 kilobytes in size. And for all of you here that really know your MMS, your picture messaging specifications, you'll know the maximum size video you could put into an MMS was 200 kilobytes. So I thought, this would make fantastic test data. So I transferred the video from email to the phone using USB transfer technology in 2002, 2003. Let that sink in. Yet again, another first for Sony Ericsson. And when the Kylie Minogue video was on this phone, I decided to insert it into an MMS. Now, I know we have people from all different tech backgrounds on the call here, but as a tester, when I inserted it into an MMS, a brand new MMS, because it was it was over double the size that was allowed, I expected it not to insert. I expected a user-friendly message to say, hey, Lee, dude, fool, what are you trying to do, insert such a huge file into an MMS? But it didn't happen. It inserted it. So I went, bug number one. Then I decided to send, using this phone, that MMS to another phone that I had in my hand. And I thought, surely the validation in the code stops this MMS sending because it's too big. It's over twice the size. But no, there was no validation. I went, bug number two. And then the next, I don't know, I'd say 2 hours got a little bit interesting. First of all, on this very phone, I noticed the orange network symbol disappear. And I thought, that's interesting. And then people around me started saying, the orange network's gone down, to which I thought, that's also very interesting. And then the head of engineering, and Lawrence, if you remember his name, Dave Morton, who was about 6'3", and if you could imagine a real life mad professor character, it was this dude. He had hair with a bald patch in the middle. He was tall, he was lanky, he was energetic, he was loud, he was mental. He comes bowling down the office. Someone in this office has brought down the orange network. And I'm like, that's interesting. I spent the next, I don't know, let's just say half an hour, 45 minutes in his office explaining why I decided to use a Kylie Minogue video to bring down the orange network. It wasn't a very comfortable conversation. It actually made the 6 o'clock news that night, because back in the day, if an operator lost network coverage for any reason, it usually made the news. So when I was at home and I saw it on the 6 o'clock news, I turned around to my wife and I went, that was me. And she turned around and said, you don't half speak shit. But anyway, I wanted to relay what it was like to be a rock star. And just for clarity, these two are not rock stars. I just wanted to put a northeast reference in there. Okay, so moving on. What this did was it started to build a bit of a gut feeling as to what tech was really cool and what tech wasn't. And that was reinforced when I went to Sony PlayStation. I nearly said Sony Ericsson again then. No, so in 2009 to 2012, I was head of European test operations for PlayStation. And I was very lucky to work on 4, what I would say, cutting edge technologies. So augmented reality. Now, well, that's a PS Vita. The PSP had a game on it in 2009 that was augmented called Invisimals. And it was massive in Spain. And it was using augmented reality. And when I saw that technology, when I first entered Sony PlayStation, I was like, wow, this is mental. This is phenomenal. When we come to a later example, I'll come to how augmented reality is going to be a thing of the now and the future. But that gets a green tick. See that green tick there? That's me saying, I think that's going to take off. Then I worked on the PlayStation Move technology. Now, it was proper shit. I'm not going to lie. And they actually told us it was going to be crap by giving it a cross, which is what it got from me. I just didn't like it. I thought Xbox were light years ahead of us with their Connect technology. But then I saw this in San Francisco, not this specific model, but I saw a prototype of the PlayStation VR headset. And I saw 3 different prototypes. And I've got to admit, it gets a green tick with me because to this day, it's still not become mainstream, but I still think it will do. I think it's going to have its day. And then I worked on gaming 3D, which was shocking. It was shocking on many levels. The money and investment needed to convert a game into 3D was absolutely astronomical. And we found out that only 1% of gamers actually went ahead and played the game in 3D. So it got canned. And my gut feeling there was, nah, this isn't going to take off. So you might have heard me say gut feeling quite a lot. So I've shown you the cutting edge technology I've worked on. I've shown you how it's influenced my gut feeling and how it's influencing my thoughts. So now I hope I've built some credibility in order to predict the future. Ooh. Okay, maybe not. So I want to pull this quote to start, because if I predict the future, I'm prepared to be wrong in order to be original. So half the things I'm going to say in the next 10 minutes may never happen. I don't care. I'm willing to stick my neck on the block here and come up with some stuff in order to be original. And this guy, if you don't know who this guy is, go and Google him and look at his TED Talk talks. He's done one that I think is the most watched TED Talk of all time. It's about how schools are killing creativity. And if any of you have children on the line, I know a couple of you do, it's probably one of the best TED Talks. Well, it's the best TED Talk I've ever seen. And that's probably his first sentence in that TED Talk. He passed away last week as well, which was very sad. So, incoming prediction. I want you to really open your mind here. And those of you that have seen this talk before know what's coming. But I really want you to open your mind to the following scenario, because you're going to think it's the future. Right, there's a woman walking down the road, and she's wearing the Microsoft mixed reality glasses. So they do a lot of augmented reality, these glasses. And she's covered in wearable tech. And I'm not actually talking about that wearable tech there. I'm talking about wearable tech that's sewn into her shoes, her socks, her tights, her underwear, her bra, her coat, her jumper, her scarf, her hat. It's everywhere. It's in every fabric. And she sees this lady walking towards her in this red dress. Now, usually if I was in the room, I'd say bonus point if you can guess the film. The film is from The Matrix there, by the way. So when she sees this woman walking towards her wearing that red dress, several things happen in milliseconds. Her pupils dilate, a bit of sweat leaves the body, and her heart rate jumps a beat. That's all data. That's all data that we collect. It goes into our big data lake. It goes through our real-time decision engine. And what we do is we project back into the top right-hand corner of those glasses a picture of her wearing that red dress in her exact size. And because those glasses have a microphone and a speaker, a voice appears and says, "Would you like to purchase?" And she says, yes. And someone delivers it, or better still, she 3D prints it at home and she pays for it with Bitcoin. Now, that might sound like the future. All that technology there exists right now. The only thing stopping us weaving and knitting all of that together is bloody GDPR. If it wasn't for GDPR, we would have all the data in order to knit all that together to make it seamless. Now then, when you heard that scenario unfolding right in front of your very eyes, did you think to yourselves as techies, how would you build and test that? As devs, how would we build that? As testers, how would we test that? Did you actually notice that there was no mobile phone in that scenario? Because the mobile phone is dead. And I'm going to convince you. I'm going to see some hands go up at the end. Okay. So going back to the question, how would you build and test that? I'd hope some of these came into your head. I'm hoping, for starters, you thought about security. When she said yes, a voice payment took place. Now, I don't even know if voice payment is a thing. It's something I've made up. It's probably something I should patent and copyright as mine. Because if anybody else uses it, they should bloody pay me. But a voice payment, that's a payment that needs security. Intent. Intent is going to be a word you hear a lot of in this talk, and a lot more in the future of tech. So the intent happened the moment she saw that red dress. And the key thing here is interoperability of all those moving parts that were IoT, the wearable tech, the glasses. It's how they all interact with each other. The performance and speed in which they do that is absolutely critical. Because when I come to the next point, intent is key. Performance and speed of data. Let me talk about if we're too slow and we project that picture in the top right-hand corner of the glasses 5 minutes later, the intent has gone. She's seen other things since then. She might have seen a white dress from ASOS. She might have seen a pair of jeans from Levi's. The intent for that red dress has passed. So all of a sudden, we're no longer relevant. The sale has gone. We need to get to the point where we deliver these customized, user experiences in the moment. And not to the point where she goes, oh, when I get back home, I'll go online and try and find that red dress and buy it, because guess what? She won't. Okay. And what else you should have pulled out was a good answer is the new right answer. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Usability and UX. So just imagine the following. Just imagine she's walking down the road. She sees that red dress. And we project, not in the top right-hand corner, but we project over both lenses so she can't see where she's going. All of a sudden, she can't see. She walks out. Bang! She's hit by the number 11 boss in Newcastle and she's dead. Death by usability and UX. It's going to happen, guys. And I know the number 11 goes to the bus station and train station in Newcastle because I've done my research. Doesn't it, Chris? Okay. So, and delivering a personalized experience, right? So all of us working in tech, this is going to be absolutely so essential. And ethics. What about ethics? How often should we be projecting? There's so many ethical questions in that scenario about how we got hold of the data. You know, so I've already said GDPR stops it. So if we want to get hold of it, we're already breaking the law and we can't do that. So I think ethical testing is going to be, and how we ethically build systems is going to be absolutely key. So I want to move on to, and again, if you think back to that, where do your current skill sets sit in order to build and test and deliver that scenario there? What's in your toolbox right now? What's lacking and what you're going to go after? Okay, so the mobile phone instead, if your skills right now are about delivering an app, delivering something on mobile web, or delivering something on a desktop, I'm telling you, in 3-4 years' time, you're going to be wondering what's going on. Let's talk about a good answer just for a moment over building a right answer. So as devs and testers in the past, if we go back 22 years when I started in tech, a requirement was the Bible. That was the right answer, right? So we all built code and tested code to the requirements. We very rarely questioned it. Now, however, it's going to be about, as machine learning kicks in, machine learning is about algorithms, it's about probability, it's about statistical models, and some customers are going to be happy with a good answer over a right answer. I'll just bring that to life with these two brands, and I'll probably pick, I'll pick Spotify. So don't worry, I'm not going to talk about the Spotify model. I'll talk about that much later when I rip it to pieces. So Spotify, right? When you go in, I don't know if you know this, but Spotify slivers their music into 8,000 genres. Just let that sink in. That's phenomenal. So when I go in and pick New Order, because that's the band I like, and a lot of you on the line are too young to probably remember them. Spotify's algorithms and their customization algorithms. Next time I go in, they're going to say, "Hey Lee, you listen to New Order. Hey, we think you're going to like the Smiths." Spotify, dudes, get your head together, because the data shows that that's a good answer, whereas actually to me, it's an insulting answer. Because in the world of music, you can't like New Order and the Smiths. It's like supporting Newcastle and Sunderland. It's like supporting Man U and Liverpool. It doesn't happen. I've not met a single human being that likes both bands. Right, so that's where software can't know that unless we actually teach it. But this is where I think these two brands actually do a really good job of customizing the journey. I really do. And each time you watch a film or you like a film on Netflix, it's learning. You're training it to get better and better. So when you first go into Netflix, they're probably going to get 50% right for you. If you've been on Netflix for 5 years, I bet you that's close to 95%, because you have trained your own algorithm to put in front of you content you want. And that's the future. That is the future for retail. It's the future for a lot of things. And it's this. The future is data-driven product development. And that's a saying that's quite hard to say when you're drunk. I'm not drunk because I'm in the office. But if I was drunk, that would be hard to say. And look at the stats there. They're really telling. 48% of consumers spend more when their experience is personalized. 90% of marketeers believe personalization is the future, and 74% of consumers get frustrated when content has nothing to do with them. Does that sound familiar? This is happening right now, guys. Okay, so more predictions about the future. Fasten your seatbelts. This is going to be fast and furious. Okay, so incoming prediction, there'll be three kinds of people in the future: those in power, those that write code or involved in data, and creative people. Creative people being musicians, actors, painters, artists, whatever. Now, we could all say we're creative, but that's what I mean when I say creative people there. So if you have children, if they're not going to fit into one of those three categories there, what they're going to be doing, I really don't know. If you move forward 10 years, if you're not in those three categories, I have no idea what you're going to be doing. Incoming prediction, Samsung will leave the mobile market by 2023. Right, I've been predicting this for 4 years. So each year the year rolls on, I'm just moving that number on by a year. It will happen. And when it does, I will have got it right. The reason I think they're going to leave the mobile market is a couple of reasons. One, they're investing a lot of their time on IoT at the moment. And two is the bottom bit. So mobile phones go in trends. So myself and Lawrence worked at Sony Ericsson. When we were there, we were number 2 in the market. Number 1 was Nokia, and they are nowhere to be seen. Now it's Samsung number 1, shock horror, it's not Apple, and number 2 is the disgraceful company called Apple. And this is the last time I'll use their name in this presentation. I feel like I need some mouthwash or something. But anyway, Apple. When was the last time you saw any innovation out of Apple? I just can't remember. These guys can produce the components cheaper. They can, honestly, the Chinese market, phone manufacturers will take over from Apple and Samsung. Mark my words, you heard it here first, by 2023. And next year, I'll roll that on another year. Okay, another incoming prediction. These aren't my predictions. This is all backing up that the mobile phone's dead, right? So look at this. This is Gartner. This is Gartner predicting the future. And yes, there's a little bit of mobile in there, you could argue. But everything else is about AI. It's about cryptocurrency. It's about blockchain. It's really not much about the mobile phone because Gartner in 2008 predicted that by 2011 the majority of people in the UK would have touchscreen smartphones, and they were spot on. I really trust these guys, Gartner. So I would say, if you can, go and look at Gartner's predictions for the future, and then that'll give you some ideas to what skill sets to go after, because they really do say the mobile phone's dead. It's not just me. So there I am. I'm backing up the message all through the presentation. The mobile has had its day. And here's someone else who believes me. Well, I believe him actually, because he said it and now I'm saying it. James Whitaker. If you haven't followed James Whitaker, if you haven't seen any of his videos, I strongly recommend going and watching his videos. For a couple of reasons. One, he's one of the best presenters I've ever seen. And two, his content is always really thought-provoking. And this slide is from a presentation he did 4 years ago in London. And he was talking about the disruptors through the decades. So it goes back to the 80s, and the disruptors, or the late 70s, 80s, were the mainframes. And then in the 90s was the home PC. 2000s was the World Wide Web. 2010, it was actually the App Store, the Apple's App Store, that was the disruptor. And if you know the story about when it launched, the Google executives went into their Monday meeting and someone said they were 50% down on hits. And the exec board went, why is that? And someone pulled out an Apple phone, which I don't believe went down very well. And they said it's because Apple have just launched an App Store. And that's what led to everybody's going through Safari instead of Google. So that was a proper disruptor. And now what James is saying in the 2020s is the disruptor, the phone's had its day. The disruptors are, your IoT, big data, cloud, I could go on and on. It's things like smart buildings, smart cities. Those are going to be the future things we all work on. It's not going to be the mobile phone. And some of you won't realise, but I built this presentation pack end of February. I was meant to come up to Newcastle, I think March the 17th, I'm going to get something around that date, and give this talk in person. And what happened to me in February was, if you remember, the Australian bushfires were raging in January. In February in this country, Staffordshire was under a lot of water, and I was going down to a Villa match in February. and that very nearly stopped me getting there. And then, of course, the early signs of COVID were just starting to come out just as I built this pack. Now, I did have slides to say all that, but I just thought it was easier to just say it. The message here, and I know you will get it, is Mother Nature is the accelerator of tech and will be forever and a day now, because I think now we're here not just with COVID for a long time, but there'll be something after that. There'll be something after that, because we're destroying our planet. Mother Nature fights back. And I'll give you an example of how this accelerates technology. I'm now working in the car industry from a software perspective, and the manufacturers now are getting to the point where they don't really want people to go into the car showrooms. They want to build a digital experience that means a customer gets enough experience either through VR, AR, through machine learning, giving them a good answer. And that means they don't have to go into a car showroom. That's groundbreaking. And what's led to that? COVID. Mother Nature will accelerate. Okay, so for God's sake, Rathbone, get on with it. Okay, I will. Controversial incoming slide. Hold on to your seats, folks. I believe, from a testing perspective, and I understand this is a tech talk, but I do want to talk a little bit about testing here. I believe automating at the UI is one of the biggest tech swindles the world has ever seen. And the reason for that is multi-layered. The main reason is when all these automating at UI strategies came out and tools, the automating at UI was driven by tool vendors and consultants. And they knew damn well that was a world where it was predominantly waterfall. And they knew by driving this, they knew test teams weren't talking to dev teams about what dev teams were doing regarding their testing. They knew that most testing was done at the UI. So it was a happy picking for them. And they got some quick wins, which then grew and grew and grew. And the automating at the UI phenomenon that we're dealing with right now has all come from those days. Now, the reason I say it's the biggest tech swindle ever is I believe in automating at the UI, but I believe about the right level of automating at the UI, and that strategy should be driven from the bottom up. And what I mean by that is the amount of unit testing that's being done and the amount of quality checks that are done, i.e. peer reviews, there's all kinds of things, code coverage tools, unit checks, layering it on to the next layer, your messaging layer, your API, whatever your servicing layer is, what automation and checks are taking place there, and exploratory testing. And then when you come to the UI, because you should have had such a great layer of checks and exploratory testing going on at those layers, when you come to the UI, your automation should be minimal. You should be just automating a few main use cases or main user journeys just to give you confidence. Again, nothing's broken. What you shouldn't be doing is having everything automated at the UI and very little below the bonnet. And that's why I say it's the biggest. We're still trying to recover from this. And I think what's happened is now with the tech change of going into the cloud with AWS, Azure, I think this is changing. I think the tide is changing. And I think this is very similar to how Spotify did their 2 videos about their culture. If you've not watched these videos, I would say go and watch them, but please bear in mind they are a sham and a scam. So when these came out in 2014, it blew the world away. Everyone's like, oh my God, Spotify. I believe Spotify is a great company, by the way, and I'm not going to disrespect them in that aspect. But these videos are the greatest IT tech recruitment propaganda tools the world has ever seen. And I genuinely mean that, because Spotify said they didn't work in this way. And yet everybody now has gone off and gone, oh, we should be working the Spotify model. Spotify don't work in the Spotify model. Why on earth would you go and do the same? You crazy fools. They hoodwinked the world, I'm telling you. But let's move on again. Sorry, I've just got this one slide here. I'm hearing this a lot recently. Manual testing is dead because automation is killing it. I strongly disagree with this, and I'm sorry it's gone into a little bit of a testing slant here. It's the only bit of testing slant I put in, because most of this I'm hearing is from devs, and they believe that it's just pure automation solves everything. Automation is so important, but it only automates the knowns. It doesn't go and look for the unknowns. It won't tell you what the usability is of a bit of software. It won't tell you what the qualitative reactions of your customers are. So in DevOps, if you think about the DevOps infinity loop, and if you don't know it, I'm making the shape of the infinity loop. Every single part of that infinity loop is automated, even the monitoring, alerting, and logging. Where's the qualitative feedback in DevOps? Is DevOps dead? Maybe that's my next talk. I don't know. But anyway, let's get back to it. I think something great that's happened in the last couple of years is that dev teams and devs are creating far better quality code. I think the tools are allowing them to do that. I think open source tools have allowed this to happen. I think the microservice pipelines, the code as a pipeline, CI, CD, all of that DevOps has meant that teams are creating far better quality software. The question or challenge is, with the new technology and the new scenarios coming out, how do we continue to keep that going? That's a challenge that you guys can take back, you folks can take back to your teams and ask that very question. If we're great now at doing this, how can we be better? This whole talk, and again, it all boils down to what skills are in your toolbox. This whole talk is about self-development. And this is a talk I gave 3 years ago in Dublin. It's basically, if you've watched The Matrix, you know he gives him a choice. And we all have a choice. On this call, you all have a choice as to what you're going to do after. You can either take the blue pill and nothing will happen about your self-development, and you'll just accept that, life will just, pass you by. Or after this talk, you can take the red pill and you can start doing some actions about how you can become relevant for the future if you feel you're not relevant now for the future. I've created this to try and help you. I call it the Rathbone quadrants. Right, I like that. I've patented that as well. You use that, you won't mean money. Right, so this is stolen purely from the Agile testing quadrants, the actual format. I don't mind saying that. I asked Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory if I could steal this format, and they were cool with it. So if you're probably wondering what to go after regarding self-development, of all these new techs I've told you about, of all these new worlds we're going to live in, it's a bit overwhelming, isn't it? I feel overwhelmed, big style. If you go on Twitter, everyone's learnt this, everyone's learnt that, everyone's got that certification. It's like, shit, do I need all that? Right, but this can help you. So let's go through the quadrants. Let's start with quadrant 1 down the bottom here. If you're looking for something to go after, start looking at the trends from tech thought leaders like Gartner, who I've already mentioned. Go to the ThoughtWorks Tech Radar. Let's have a quick show of hands. Who on the line here goes to the ThoughtWorks Tech Radar? That's a good show of hands. Okay. Not enough, but it's a good show of hands. Right, on there, it's like a radar, like a missile coming into a submarine. They scan the outside and they say, what are we thinking about? What new tools, languages, methodologies are we seeing emerge? What are we assessing as the missile gets nearer? What are we assessing? And they'll filter some out saying, we're not going to assess that anymore because we don't like it. Or, yeah, we've assessed that. Let's bring it in and do a pilot. And then after the pilot, we'll go, yeah, we're going to adopt it. So the ThoughtWorks Tech Radar is really cool. Moving up to the top left, trends from your company roadmap. So again, show of hands, please. Who in the last 2 weeks or month has gone to their architect, product owners or CTO and asked them what's on the tech roadmap because I need to align my skills to make sure I'm relevant? Okay, not many hands. That's something you can do tomorrow at work. Okay, so I know we're in a virtual world, sorry. So that's something you can ping a video conference in with those people and ask them and say what's on it, because I want to be employed in 18 months, 2 years. So show what's on the roadmap and I'll adjust. I'll go off and learn something. Top right, trends from your craft. And again, I make apologies. This is testing because that's the world I'm in, but you can change that to developing or BA, Scrum Master, whatever you want to change it to. And again, I try and surround myself with testers. I try to go to testing events. I go to meetups. I'm always scanning social media for what's happening in the testing world. And then the bottom right, trends from your company industry. Okay, so I've just come from a retail industry. I'm now in an automotive industry. I'm looking at what the trends are in there. So for retail, I'll give you an example. When I was at Very, which is where Simon's at right now, I realised voice was going to be really important. I realised Alexa or the Google Home, which we were talking about just before the conference, I realised that was going to be the way people wanted to shop going forward. So when I looked all round the 4 quadrants, voice and Alexa and all the other voice stuff was coming out in all 4 quadrants. And actually, it's something I was really interested in and something I really enjoyed. So what I did was I decided to go off and build my own Alexa skill and learn how to do it. I fell over many times. I had to ask for help. I started pairing. I fell over again with the other guy who paired with me. We fell over. We then decided to go into a mobbing session where there were 6 of us in a room with 1 laptop, 1 screen. And 2 sessions later, we built our first Alexa skill. And I thought that was really cool, actually. So, you know, hopefully that's a model that you can, because you can't do a public talk unless you've got a model. Hopefully that's something you can take with you. Okay, this is absolutely key. Everybody working in tech right now will have to learn how to deal with that there, right? And everything that goes around it. So that's a great slide. I'm not quite sure where I stole it from, but I'm sure if you just Google resilience, you'll get that picture. The reason we need to be resilient is the rate of change is, we all know it's absolutely astronomical at the moment. It's only going to get quicker. So we have to learn how to get through the forming, storming, norming, performing model. And I've only just realised in the last year they've added a 5th one onto that, which is adjourning. That's a brand new one added to the model. Or if you're used to this model, which is the curve of change, some people, when you announce change, take ages to come through that curve. I'm sorry, but if you're working in tech, you're going to have to learn how to, as a team, go through this forming, storming, norming, performing model, and as an individual, how to go through that change of the change curve. Because if you're down here in the anger for a long time, guess what? I don't think your company will employ you for much longer. And I'm sorry to be blunt. Moving on, what else? Okay, so Alexa. Let's take Alexa as something you can go and put in your toolbox straight after this. So to build an Alexa skill, you have to have an AWS account. Guess what? That's free. Once you're in the AWS, you can go and get yourself an Alexa developer's account. That's free. Inside that Alexa developer toolkit is a simulator, an emulator. So you can build your own skill and test it without even having to buy an Alexa. There's loads of videos which are free. Most of them are embedded in AWS. That's the best place to go, by the way, to get the videos as to how to build an Alexa skill are in AWS. They're not on YouTube. So again, everything there is there for you to go and build your own Alexa skill. So why wouldn't you do it? And when I built my own Alexa skill with the help of others, I then understood how it could be tested. And all that is free. And again, just to reinforce why I think Alexa is a thing of the future right here, right now. Look at this perfect family here. Aren't they perfect? Look at them. They're all so photogenic. Look at that. Even the dog. Look at that photogenic dog. Lovely. And this photo is not photoshopped. If anybody on this call says it's photoshopped, I'm coming after you. Because that there, the girl has got an Alexa on her lap. I didn't put that there. She put it there. Okay, move on 2-3 years. That dog, I'm sorry, mate, you're gone. You're history. You're no longer the family pet. Everyone's going to be stroking their Alexa, I'm telling you. And the reason I know that is because of this picture here. This is my daughter with the Mark 1 Alexa that came out. I bought that the day it came out on Amazon in the UK, which was a month after the US. When I came home from work one day, I came through the door and she was talking to Alexa and she said, Alexa, tell a child what a noun is. The moment you see kids using technology on this scale, you know it's going to become mainstream. And I'll flip it around. My grandmother, who's nearly 80, not my grandmother, my mother-in-law, sorry. My mother-in-law, who's nearly 80, she is completely blind. And when I say blind, I'm not talking about, usually when people are blind, they see shadows or shapes. She sees nothing. We bought her an Alexa. We bought an Alexa. And when I go around, she constantly talks to it. I went around one day and she was waltzing away in the conservatory, listening to some jive, rubbish music. But she was enjoying herself. She talks to it all the time. It's a companion for her. So when you see two complete extremes, age groups using Alexa, you know it's going to be mainstream. So learn it. Let's talk about big data. So big data is a myth. I'm telling you now, if you're not working in big data, don't be scared of it, because people working in big data want it to be a myth because it's pushing up their wages. Okay, controversial. I'm being a bit OTT now, but big data is no different to data back in the day. The things that have changed are there's more sources coming in, and because there's more sources and because of the cloud, the tools that deal and flatten and validate that data have had to change. It then goes into a data warehouse. Guess what? They've been around for years and years. And then the tools used to report on that data by data scientists, data analytics people, guess what? They're doing the job slightly different. But this is not a myth. If you're scared of getting into big data, go and get into it. Go and do yourself a basics course, because once you understand that this is just about testing the flow of data, it's actually not easy to understand. And here's a slide of all the data tools. I put this up to scare you. I'm joking. If somebody puts a slide like this up, it means they're trying to scare you, trying to reinforce the myth. But in all honesty, these are all the tools that could make up a big data lake. But in all honesty, this first box here, they'll only be using one, possibly two from there, maybe one, two from there, one from there. They want to build this myth that big data is confusing. You need specialist skills. Yeah, you need some really good skills, but don't be scared. Don't be put off by it. And as we're talking big data, I want to give you this golden nugget. In fact, there's 11 golden nuggets there. As a tester, I think ethical bias testing is going to be massive. And I don't know anything about ethical bias testing, but I tell you what, by going to the ThoughtWorks Tech Radar, I found out that they're looking at these three tools here. These three tools are tools that data scientists should be using to make sure that there's no biases in their data. So again, I shouldn't have to go and look and find out what those tools are and how to use them. What I can do is go to data scientists and say, how are you making sure your algorithm doesn't have biases in it? How are you making sure that the test data you're using to test your algorithms don't have biases in them? And if they look at you with a blank face, then you can point them to these three tools. Okay, IoT. What's the big thing that you can go after with IoT? Well, it's the security and performance. That is something that a lot of people, and I think a lot of devs now are thinking about. And I know there's a lot of testers thinking about how they can upskill themselves there. I see a great mindset change with devs over the last probably 2-3 years. I'm seeing great ownership with code. I'm seeing great ownership of quality of code. And I think, again, moving to the cloud has bred a lot of this, going into pipelines, CI/CD. I think it's bred a lot of this ownership, which they used to have before test teams were created. But I think testers need to catch up and think more about security and performance. It's the thing. If you want to be rich, go after that security all day long. And this is something that even if you're a Scrum Master, a PM, a dev, or a tester, or anybody working in tech, you should learn to understand pipelines as code, POC. Now, I know POC stands for proof of concept, but here I think it's the new acronym. And I think everybody knows talking about pipelines as code. And I love this picture down below that really, for me, does bring to life visually the difference between agile dev, continuous integration, continuous delivery, deployment, and DevOps. And I think if you're not knowing what these pictures mean, if this is new language to you, go away and start researching. And this is how you'll get on this journey of upskilling. And then microservices. So microservices, they're a thing. People think they're scary because they're usually in the cloud and usually in a pipeline and usually automated. Guess what? Again, just like big data, it's no different to how we tested before. You've got something at the UI which is tiny, a microservice that passes data from the database. That, as a model and a flow, is no different to what we've been doing for years. It's just tools have changed and there's a lot more automation involved. Don't be scared when someone says microservice architecture. Okay. And this is the big one, isn't it? For me, I think devs are well on board with this. I think they're way ahead of testers regarding knowing what the cloud is, what it means from being performant, from being secure, high availability. I think testers have got to catch up because all these words around the outside how testers are going to have to add value. And this is the big one. Testers now and dev teams in the cloud are being asked for, well, where are the costs? When you spin up an environment, have you got something at the end where someone asks the question, is it time to rip that environment down, that instance down? Who's looking at the CPU? Who's looking at the scalability? Sometimes when we first moved to the cloud, what I saw was everyone just go, hey, it's all right. We're no longer on a box. We're no longer constrained. Everything's cheaper in the cloud. And they just kept going bigger and bigger and bigger. And cost started getting closer to like a box. But now I think what I'm seeing now is everybody's now starting to realize that when you write code for a microservice in the cloud, whatever it is, it's not just about does it work? It's about all these words on the outside. What else? Onto the back straights. Right, so controversial, incoming slide. I'm a tester. I think demands for testers in the future is going to be less. And what am I basing this off? A lot of things. Experience. When I was at Very and I joined 5 years ago, their test department was 100 and that's 40. Okay, and I'm seeing this a hell of a lot. You know my slide where I said the code that dev and dev teams are creating is better quality than 10 years ago? There you go. You know what I said about everything in the cloud and all the tools that AWS, Azure give devs to build a pipeline and build in automated checks along the way? There you go. There is room for testers in the future, but I do think the role of the tester more than any other role in tech is not only under threat, but testers need to change probably the most out of everybody in the tech ecosystem. But here's a hint. Okay, so if we see that this is the team that testing is part of, you can call that the dev team, whatever you want to call it, and here's like the testers. This word shift left is something that's been used with quality and testing for probably, I'm going to say probably 10 years now. And I think we all know what that probably means. I think the value of testers is still there, of like helping shift quality right into the very, very early stages of dev. But guess what? There's a shift right. Now, if you ask people what shift right means, they'll probably quote you the DevOps monitoring, alerting, and logging part of the infinity loop. That's not my take on shift right. I think shift right, and this is an opportunity for testers, I think shift right means this. Software is going to become so complex with so many different configurations and interoperabilities. I mean, look at IoT. I don't think internal teams, which is this here, I don't think they can guarantee quality using DevOps or automation. I think there has to be something else coming on the horizon, and I think that is getting to a certain internal quality, but then putting the software in the hands of the customer. And what I mean by that is not all customers. I think the gaming industry got this right in 2009 when they started the closed betas. What you do is you get your internal quality and you put it in the hands of some trusted customers to get that qualitative feedback and quantitative feedback. Quantitative feedback can be in the code, so it's your automated logging, but it can also be quantitative feedback from the customer. And I think this is key for anybody working in tech in the next 10 years. However much you think you're putting the customer at the heart of everything you do right now, it's simply not enough. The environment you build and test in right now is no longer fit for purpose because it's not the same or doesn't resemble what the customers are using it in. And feedback loops and lean thinking are going to be absolute king. And this is a great quote from Mike Cohen, who's one of the godfathers of Agile. And I love this quote. And it's get something done enough that you can feedback on it, repeat until the feedback is that you've done enough. And I want to bring this company into this story. This company, Digital Bridge, what they do is they have an app that you scan your empty bathroom and it uses machine learning to tell you where you should put your rail, your heat, your radiator, your shower, your toilet, your sink, in order to maximize the space you've got. And I saw these guys present at a conference, and straight after I went up to them and I said, how did you test that? And they gave me the answer that I absolutely knew they'd give me. They said, we got to a certain internal quality, but with all the different configurations of everyone's bathrooms in their houses, we knew we had to put it in the hands of some customers. So they physically went to people's houses, put the phone in the hand of the customer, hands of the customer, The customer then used it, and qualitative feedback was stuff like this. Ooh, oh dear. That's all qualitative, that's emotional, that's qualitative feedback. And they said, unless we'd done that, we'd have gone to market and probably got a lot of things wrong. So these guys have completely backed up my idea that one of the opportunities for dev teams, testers, whatever you want to call it, to go and add an extra step to your quality cycle, which is go and put it in the hands of customers. Because guess what? Shock horror, your customers don't care if you're using waterfall, if you're using agile, if you're using lean principles, whether you're using DevOps, whether you're using automation, design thinking, it doesn't matter. All they want is value, and they want it delivered in a really good time span that's relevant to them. So bear that in mind when you go to work tomorrow. And I'm going to finish up with a quote from James Whitaker. I love this. And we've been talking about this in my new job here at where I work now. This is the future for all tech teams. If I zoom in, it's all about intents. Determine the intents our customers care about, understand when and where they first occur, capture them in a digital form, locate the data to resolve and put that personalized experience. And if you remember that scenario that I took you through, that's exactly taking on board everything James Whitaker talks about here. This is the future for tech teams. Okay, you're going to need some of these special ingredients in order to go on your self-development journey and to make yourself relevant for the future. Because guess what? The mobile phone's dead. I've proved it. And when we come to the show of hands afterwards, every single hand's going to go. But in case they don't, here's some things you're going to need, some ingredients. Okay, so you're going to need to be more pirate. This is a great book. This book is about, it brings to life the pirates from the 16th, 17th centuries. Now, pirates have a negative word, don't they? But actually, this book brings to life how agile they were in mindset, how equal and equality was absolute a driver for a pirate ship, so everyone was paid the same. The squad on the ship was primarily 50-50, so 50% male, 50% female. If you got injured, you got compensated. The only person who took a slightly bigger cut, and it was only slightly, was the captain, but everyone else had equal pay. And the fact that they beat the Spanish Armada, one of the Spanish fleets, by spinning off 8,000 pirates over 24 hours to destroy a Spanish fleet, and those 8,000 pirates vanished into thin air within 8 hours of the defeat of Spain, shows how agile in mindset they actually were. So it's a great book about agile, and you're going to need some of that. It's called The Curiosity Gene, and you're going to need loads, and you're going to need to be a fire starter, twisted fire starter, in order to go and look at that skill sets toolbox you've got, in order to realize that maybe the mobile phone and the world you're working on right now is going to change. Shock horror, I'm going to deliver some contradictory terms here. The mobile phone has had its day as your primary device, but the mobile phone has a huge part to play. All that's going to happen is, instead of being primary, it's going to submerge and be part of that layer of tech. It's going to play an important part in that layer of tech. When I say the mobile phone is dead, it's provocative to make you think about your skill sets. But in reality, it will still be around for a long, long time. It just won't be the primary thing that you go to all the time. If you're wearing the Microsoft mixed reality glasses, that will do stuff that the mobile phone is doing right now. And here's some really good books that I've read. I recommend them to anybody working in tech. There aren't many tech books in there. So for example, Start With Why is nothing to do with tech. It's just everything you do, you should start with why. Radical Candor is about giving feedback in the moment like you can. Really, really good. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is a really good book. It's not tech driven. It's just about, you know, what drives a dysfunctional team and how you can fix it. I love this one. It's Communities of Practice. It's only a cheap book. It's about 20 pages long. ThoughtWorks use this as their reference guide for setting up communities of practice every company they go to. Creativity.inc is about how Pixar built a creative culture. There's loads of good, and of course the Phoenix Project and now the Unicorn Project are 2 massive go-to books for anybody working in tech. But here's the one I'm reading again for a second time now, Accelerate. I love this book because it's very data and maths driven, and any leader in any company should be reading these books, as well as anybody involved in tech. So I'm talking CEOs should be reading this, not just CTOs, not just people, engineers, whatever. Everybody in tech should read this, and leaders of a company. It tells you what metrics you should be using in order to become high performing, but it also gives you 24 traits at the back of the book that you can start talking about within your teams in order to become high performing. If you buy the book, all you need to do is read those 4 metrics and go to the back of the book and read the 24 traits. You don't need to bore yourself with the graphs and everything that it goes into. I am, because I'm curious, but if you want a quick hit, just do what I've said there. And I'm going to wrap up by saying, oh, here's Arthur C. Clarke again. Yeah, there he is again, making a second appearance. That video there, that 1960 video, he does some mental predictions in that video. I mean, 1960, let that sink in, it was 60 years ago. Guess what he was saying? He was saying that there'll be surgeons doing brain surgery in New Zealand on patients in the UK. But I think he said by the year 2000. Now he was probably off by a bit, but with robotics and machine learning, AI, that's not a million miles away now. That video is brilliant. So if you're going to watch that, absolutely fantastic, because guess what? The next video, Humans Need Not Apply, is what I would call the new up-to-date version of that. So you had Arthur C. Clarke, 1960, predicting the future. This one, I think, was produced in 2015. It's really provocative, and I recommend listening to it. And that's it. I'm done. I'm going for a beer. Thank you. Good night.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Leigh. That was an awesome talk. Any questions for Leigh at all? So I've got myself one. So you mentioned, I guess, towards the start that GDPR was a big factor in stopping all of those different areas of tech coming together.
Yeah.
Would you say that, let's say that GDPR wasn't really a thing, and that there was kind of more relaxation on tying those things together? Do you think there would be further issues when putting that to the public? Like, for example, preventing a company from creating like a monopoly? Or do you reckon it's quite kind of open?
No, I think there's going to be issues. I think GDPR is mega important, by the way. I must put that caveat in. I know I was being flippant in the talk, but that was to invoke this kind of chat after. I think there's a massive backlash, isn't there, going on at the moment, where people are refusing to share their data because they're worried about the ethical side of things, and that's why I put ethical testing in there. I don't know what the answer is, to be honest, Chris. I think, me personally, I would sell all my data to the devil right now if it meant I could have that scenario and that user experience I spoke about, where a woman went down the road and had that wonderful user experience. That's light years away, by the way. When I said I think that technology exists, it does. I think piping it together is a lot harder than I'm making it sound, in all honesty. And I think pulling data from all the different sources and companies being happy to share, because a lot of companies work hard at getting that data for their own use, to then say sharing it, I think that's a big ask. I really do, because then I think, well, why are we putting all this effort into capturing this data, using it for our purpose, and now we've got to share it with the world? So I think there's a number of things in there. I think it's a very, very complex area. I think GDPR is right for us right here, right now, to protect us as consumers and companies. So if you think I'm anti-GDPR, I was being flippant in the talk. It's mega important. What the future holds and how that morphs and changes, I really don't know. But if we look at all the scientific films where people are in the VR world or AR world, you can't have that world without GDPR changing, is my own opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not entirely sure whether people now understand, though, how their data is actually being used.
Exactly, yeah.
Especially with, I guess, the next generation. You said about your daughter using Alexa. But you know, because I guess it isn't maybe taught in kind of in schools. Like, you kind of the next generation know what goes on with their data, or?
I don't know, but here's something shocking for you. So I went to a secret reveal of Microsoft Connect, you know, for their gaming platform. And they were really excited. I think there was about 80 people in the room. It was a big hush thing, and we had to sign NDAs to say that we shouldn't be talking about it. So I'm breaking that NDA right now. But it was 10 years ago, so I feel all right saying it. When we went there, they demonstrated the connector. I thought, wow, this is mind blowing. It blew me away. But then they revealed this bit of AI that they built. And basically, using Connect, it would sense when a person, and let's face it, most people are a child that uses the Microsoft gaming platform. Microsoft One, is it, or Xbox? This bit of AI would recognize that it was, let's use my son. My son walks in the room, goes, "Hi, Ben, how are you today?" And this character would appear on the TV from the Xbox. And it was a cartoon character, but it was like, "How are you today?" It strikes up a conversation with my son, even to the point where it goes, "You're looking depressed today, is everything okay?" Right, when they demoed that, the room went silent. There was a bit of a gasp, and the room went silent. And after the demo, they went, "What does everyone think?" And a load of hands went up and went, "That's becoming a parent. I'm not comfortable with that." And you know what they did? They toggled it off. They didn't remove the software, they toggled it off. Connect has been listening to you for 10 years. Your Samsung TVs have been listening to you for 10 years. Your Alexa, obviously, is always listening to you because it has to listen for Alexa, please. And I'm sorry, I know we've got Alexa on the call here. What I mean is Alexa, the bit of software. It has to be always listening. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So with all that always listening, are they capturing everything? You're goddamn right they are. And if they're not, Samsung owned up to it. They said, "Our TVs have been listening to you for years." It's naughty, isn't it? It all ties into the ethical side. Where's the line? Where are people happy? Me, I don't care because I'm not doing anything naughty. I'm not killing anybody in my lounge. I'm not selling anything illegal on eBay or the dark web, blah, blah, blah. But there are people that really value their protected data, and that's why GDPR is so important.
Leigh, do you think other things will stop, like usability? I mean, you go on a website today, or you open something up on your phone, and it's, you know, do you want to allow cookies? Do you want to do this? Then you're getting adverts thrown at you. Usability is horrendous. So imagine that on a screen. It drives you nuts. You turn it off. Walking down the road, getting that popping up at you every 2 minutes.
Lawrence, did you see my LinkedIn post on this probably about 6 months ago saying how the user experience on the web has got so bad now? And I think I listed 20 things. I think you've listed half of them there that you have to do before you even get to a clean experience of browsing a web page. And I think the company Reach that do a lot of the websites for news pages, I think they're criminal at this. But yes, is there a fear that that's going to happen in that example that I said about the woman walking down the road?
Yeah.
And that's why I put ethical in. Is it ethical to have so much coming onto a screen before you actually get to where you want to be? I think it's shocking. I think we've gone backwards in the last 3-4 years with user experiences on the web. I think it's disgraceful at the moment. For every reason you've just said there. And how do we stop that happening with the VR, AR and that scenario? I don't know, but I think it's going to get to the point where I'm already pissed off about it. I really am. I'll sell my data, but I don't want a horrible experience like 20 steps before I can actually view a website.
Yeah, it's an issue.
Yeah.
Going back to testers, I mean, I work a lot in resiliency testing. I've been working in financial services. They're way behind the curve, a lot of them, in terms of new technology. I mean, they've got departments working on AI and stuff, or their secret hush-hush department in the room. But in terms of my last role, we were migrating a core platform service to cloud. And I pretty much worked as a consultant as opposed to a test manager. I didn't have any testers, but it was about training the dev team and resiliency and building unit tests every step of the way. So when they build a new service, how do you know that's talking to the other services? can you build in resiliency in terms of, can you monitor the service? And if the service starts throwing up errors, spin up a new one, shut the old one down. So it was giving presentations and working in workshops with the dev team around this sort of thinking and how they as a dev team implement these and make sure do it, and the right user stories and etc. So it wasn't really a test manager role as such, but I think that's probably how a lot of test managers are going to need to move going forward in terms of moving into that mindset, in terms of training the DevOps team. They want all testers to be able to write code now. I think everything done at unit level.
I think what we're going to have, Lawrence, is a mixed world. We're always going to have a mixed world. We're never going to get 100% of companies working in DevOps. We're never going to get 100% of companies even working in an agile way. I think the moment a company moves to agile, the next thing has come on. So we're going to get this mixed world where, I don't know, let's make up some figures. 20% could be working waterfall, 50 could be agile, 10 could be CI/CD, another 10 complete CD, and then another 5 doing DevOps. I'm not sure that adds up to 100, but I've just made the numbers up. But I do feel the biggest change I've seen has been in the test management and tester layer regarding roles changing. For exactly what you've said there, I think testers and test managers, anybody involved in quality and testing, they need to morph to be a quality coach. And I think what the worst thing that happened to tech was the guy at NASA in 1957 created the first test team. And what that did was it made developers go, well, that's now somebody else's job. And for 60 years, we've been fighting this devs write code and testers test. And I think now it's coming full circle again. And we're seeing devs seizing the opportunity, and rightly so, because sometimes they're the best skilled to do all of these checks. I think our value as testers is through exploratory testing, coaching people to think why, think about quality, how we're going to do that. Everything you've just said there, Lawrence, is what the role of a tester will be in the future.
Yeah, because I think that, things like resilience, there's an assumption that, it's on AWS. You stick your code on there and it's resilient. Well, no, it's not. The platform doesn't necessarily mean what you're putting on it.
Yeah.
It's a mindset shift for dev and for the testers.
Yeah. Anybody else got any questions before we wrap up? Because I think I'm looking at the clock and I'm conscious of time.
Leigh, I have one question. You talked about self-development, which I know I always love hearing from you on self-development. And even this session today has been a self-development for me. I've come back and refreshed in the pool of knowledge, etc. What's your number one area you're currently personally going at? From what's your area of going, right, that's my...
Okay, can I give you 2 different answers?
You can.
Okay, so the first answer is out of work from a tech perspective. What am I going after? So I'm going after something called flick buttons at the moment, which are smart buttons that you press in your home, and you can either press once, press twice, or do a long press, and they do different actions. But you've got to do a little bit of syncing up behind the scenes, a little bit of if this then that. What I'm trying to do is so we can press it, so that my son's bulbs flash in his room to tell him tea's ready. Right, so that's the problem I'm trying to solve. Now, the other thing I'm going after, and you're going to chuckle here, Simon, is in my new job here, what I've actually had to do is retrain my brain to be a tester again, because I've been a test leader for so long and been in test leadership. The thing I'm going after more than anything right now is how to be a good tester again. Along with, and that's a parallel thing, which is the quality coaching, which I'm doing. But I know I'm only a week in. I'm on day 6. I'm going to have to get in there and get dirty again. So I'm retraining my brain to do that again.
Wow, fantastic! And it must be a bit of a change to knowing to get hands on again. I've gone through something personal in the last 6 months. Yeah. It's a bit of the path of change, as you say, Leigh. You're going through that at the moment. Well, good luck to you then.
There's no testers here, by the way. There might be in the future. There might be, but there's no testers here. So I've come into a world where they've got some great tech, but it's been built and tested by devs, which is fascinating.
Wow.
It's really good. Does it work? It does work. It works really well. But as we grow, and we want to scale the company, we realise that's probably not sustainable. We just need a couple of quality coaches in, of which I'm the first. And we'll see how that morphs. It might be that we realise one is enough. But it's a really exciting place to be, and I'm excited. There's no testers. It's really pushed me outside my comfort zone.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Simon. Any other questions before we head off and have a beer? Okay.
Cheers, Lee. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thank you very much, Lee. That was, like I said, an awesome talk. If I could just take the screen back off you, just got a couple of things to mention for any tech.
I've stopped sharing.
There we go. So just to mention for next month, so next month is UX month. So we have Jason Bell from DWP coming, and Helena Hill, who's actually a UX consultant herself, and she kind of runs her own business and helps people out to understand UX. So it's worth joining this one because UX isn't all about colouring in. But yeah, massive thanks. If you have any feedback for Lee or any of the anything around any tech, as I said, we are on the usual social media places. Or you can go to the website or join the Discord chat, or even just drop us an email. That would be excellent. Yeah, so then, thank you very much for coming. Big thanks to Lee. As I said, awesome talk. And hopefully, we'll see you next month. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks so much. Thank you.
Good night. Bye.